In this interview, I'm going to be talking to Thomas Lukaszuk, who's the former deputy premier under Premier Alison Redford of Alberta. And we're going to be talking about his Canadian Forever campaign. We've done some other videos. You can check them out on our Energy Media channel on YouTube. But this time, we're going to be talking about some of the core messages, why it's really important that Alberta not separate from Canada. So welcome to the interview, Thomas.
Thank you for having me.
Well, look, one of the big ones is economic risk. I mean, the separatist side makes this argument, which I think is totally bogus. And they say that if Alberta were on its own, it would have lots of the potential or opportunity to build pipelines to the West Coast, to build gas pipelines and LNG and all of these things. And that's really not the case. And in fact, Alberta would be much weaker economically if it was its own country.
That's right, Markham. I was a cabinet minister and a member of legislature for almost 15 years, from Ralph Klein on, and this issue has been analyzed to death. There was a firewall letter written by separatists at the beginning suggesting this. We're talking now 20 years ago. So this issue should have been resolved, but unfortunately it isn't, because there are some who are reigniting it. The fact is that, never mind actually separating, the very discussion of separation really puts a cooling effect on investment and on business in this province. And we saw this in Quebec. And Markham, I always use this example of Bank of Montreal because it's so symbolic. The only reason that the headquarters of Bank of Montreal are in Toronto right now is because during the separation talks, they packed their bags and moved from Montreal to Toronto. And there was a massive exodus of business from Quebec to Ontario predominantly during those days. And also, there was a massive dry up of investment, of capital investment into Quebec, and they're still feeling the effects of it. You want a more recent example? Look at Brexit. Look what happened to the economy in UK and investment. Most financial institutions moved out of London, England, and moved into Munich and Dusseldorf and France and other places in continental Europe. And they are still feeling the effects of it. And Brits are sorry that they even broached the topic. Never mind, actually were misled and voted for it. And another third good example is the Basque region in Spain. You drive through Spain and you know exactly when you enter that area, because you can see the economy suffering, and there's even Spanish government is reluctant to invest in that area because of that. So there is a very compelling economic reason not to even talk about this.
Another big issue that's come up is First Nation treaty rights, and a number
Yes.
of the First Nation chiefs have come out very strongly against separation. And I mean, most of the province is covered by treaties between the Crown, which is considered the federal government, and those First Nations. So that almost alone seems like an insuperable kind of obstacle to separation.
Well, it is. Most of us don't realize, but actually, the treaties are signed between First Nations and the Crown directly with Buckingham Palace. So the very idea of separating, it just cannot happen. It's unconstitutional. The separatists will tell you, "Don't worry, First Nations will be better off. We'll throw more money at them than they receive right now." This is not about money to First Nations. This is about their land rights. Treaties to First Nations are almost a holy thing. That's the holy grail that they have. That is the only thing that gives them rights and guarantees their rights within confederation. So that is a non-starter in itself. But unfortunately, in this exercise to promote separatism, First Nations rights have been totally ignored. And that is why our question, being positive, meets the constitutional requirement, because we don't propose to break the treaties.
I have a better word actually than Holy Grail, and that's sacred, because
Sacred,
that's the
yes.
word the First Nations use themselves. I've been in many conversations over the last 30 years with First Nations folks from chiefs on, and down, and they really believe that. And there would be a firestorm of pushback if Alberta really ever did try to separate. Now, let's talk about the stronger together framing, because I find this really interesting. There's the popular sentiment in Alberta that somehow Alberta is penalized by Ottawa all the time, its oil and gas industry in particular. But given the fact that we have Trans Mountain Expansion Pipeline built and the big LNG projects they use, on the West Coast that use Alberta gas. There's a very good argument that that Alberta actually does much better as a province than it would ever do as a country.
Well, see, this is where facts and politics don't meet. Most of your listeners will know that Alberta stands this year to sell more oil than it ever has in any year prior to this year. So we're doing well. But it has been a political culture in Alberta, and I have to tell you, when I was in government, we sort of played that same game, regrettably, where to shift focus from provincial issues, which often are difficult to solve, like healthcare, education, and others, you shift Albertans' focus onto Ottawa, and you have that external enemy, and we're fighting this external enemy, and this gets you political points. So it almost became a culture in Alberta to fight Ottawa, no matter who is in government. Actually, I'll be honest with you. When our progressive conservative government was in power, we hated when conservatives were in power in Ottawa because it's much harder to beat up on them. It's easier when liberals are in power. And you know about freezing the Eastern bastards out from all the way from Premier Lougheed. So this is sort of the political culture. But when you look at the numbers, Alberta is doing exceptionally well and will continue to do exceptionally well, but not as a separate entity. If you think that setting up a new country with new currency, new passports, with no access to tidewater, if you think that it is difficult to build pipelines right now within Canada and now having to build them across foreign jurisdictions would be easier, you're delusional. But that's exactly what they are. They are not bothered by facts and reality. They're just angry, and they want to set up a separate country. And that is why our campaign is not even focusing on them at all, because there are not enough facts in this world, and you cannot be persuasive enough to change their mind. They made up their mind, and they won't be bothered by facts.
Thomas, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it too.